everything.
Good morning, everyone. This is John with Gun.Deals. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Delta Team Tactical Warship Upper Receiver Kit. This is basically a complete kit minus the lower receiver for a pistol caliber carbine. Now, this one specifically is based off of the fairly new Aero EPC-9 kit, which has a few interesting things going on with the upper receiver, which of course we'll get into a little bit later on. Now, full disclosure on the Delta Team Tactical Warship kit is that they did send this out to me for free to review. No ammunition or money or anything else like that, but just keep in mind that they did send out the kit to me for free, so I didn't pay for it whatsoever. Now, getting into the full parts list for the Delta Team Tactical Warship build, starting out front, we have what looks to be a CAC flash cam for a muzzle device. The barrel is a 6-inch, what they call a ELD performance barrel, which is just a rebrand of somebody else's barrel. Not sure who the exact OEM is. It is a 6-inch middleweight profile barrel for a 9mm. Really good ballistics out of a 9mm cartridge, really short, really handy, does basically everything you want it to do. Now, the flash can allows a lot of the blast to be redirected downrange. Not a lot of blast on 9mm, of course, but on this build specifically also allows you to have a little bit longer of a handguard and not blow your fingers off by putting them a little bit too far forward. So the flash can's not a bad idea on this build, though I would ideally at some point in the future swap it out with a 9mm suppressor. Now, the barrel itself is 4150 chrome vanadium steel, has a 1 in 10 twist rate, again 6 inches overall length, and it is in 1/2 by 36 thread pitch, which is more of a 9mm centric thread pitch, just to make sure that you don't accidentally put on like a 5.56 flash hider on there and rearrange at the end of your barrel. Now, the handguard on this build is a incredibly simple rail. It's what they call the kickback rail. It is 7 inches long, M-lock on the 3, 6, and 9 o'clock, full pick rail on top with some cuts for ventilation. It's a very lightweight, very slim rail, no issues there. And the lockup is just 2 clamp bolts on the bottom, steel into aluminum. Incredibly simplistic, incredibly cheap, and realistically, at most, you're probably putting a light on this rail. So as far as that goes, for its intended purpose, it gives you enough space to put your hand on it, maybe a light, and that's about it. But again, for a 9mm PCC, that's just about all you need. Now, getting into the upper receiver, this is where things get interesting. This is based off of the Aero EPC-9, or their enhanced pistol caliber 9, which is basically a slight redesign of a standard 9mm AR9 upper receiver. The most interesting facet about it is that it does come with a bolted on last round bolt hold open, which essentially amounts to a bent piece of steel that fits on the inside of the upper receiver, winds its way to the outside, and fits just underneath your bolt release paddle. Now, what that does is when your magazine runs out, your Glock magazine in this case, because we are actually using this on a Aero EPC-9 lower as well, when your Glock magazine runs out, it will lift up on the inside of that bent piece of metal, which will then in turn push against your bolt release paddle, meaning that when you insert your new magazine, the only thing you have to do is hit that bolt release, just like a standard AR-15. Most AR9s do not have a last round bolt hold open, so that is a objective improvement. It does shorten up your reload times, and it does also give you a more familiar training regimen. It's the same sort of manual of arms that you'll get on an AR-15, so if you do want to use it as a training upper or just have the same ergonomics between your different guns, it does achieve that goal. Now, again, at the end of the day, it is just a piece of twisted metal that's bolted onto the outside of your upper receiver, but it does work if it's a little bit inelegant. Now, the rest of the upper receiver is perfectly fine, 70-75. It is a forged upper receiver, though again, the machining work on it from Aero Precision is nice. The lines are a little bit more aggressive. It is, of course, designed for 9mm, so you're not going to be sticking this on like a 5.56 or really anything else other than, of course, 9 or 40. And I believe they make a different upper receiver for different pistol calibers. Now, if I didn't mention it already, this is just a basic blowback 9mm, so the bolt carrier group is just a heavy slab of metal that is, of course, cut for 9mm and, of course, works with Glock mags. It is very simplistic, very rudimentary, but it does again work. This one here does have the extra weight put into the back. Some of them don't, some of them you can tune a little bit, but in this case this is just an incredibly simple heavy bolt meant to slow down the action enough for the case to have safe pressures inside after, of course, you ignite the primer, which is a nice feature to have if you're not into OODs. Now, the charging handle in this case is perfectly fine. It's just a mil-spec 7075 aluminum charging handle. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. The rest of the build kit is just a very mil-spec-ish lower parts kit and buffer tube. Now, this one here came with a pistol buffer tube, which I swapped out for a carbine buffer tube because, of course, this is sitting on an SBR lower, so I'm going to take advantage of that. One other difference on this build is that the trigger is the Hyperfire EDT, the enhanced duty trigger. It is essentially a mil-spec plus. It's still about 5.5 to 6 pounds, but it's a very, very smooth pull, a little bit of creep, and a very, very short forced reset. Again, very similar to a mil-spec trigger, very, very similar to like a polished mil-spec trigger, if you will, but just a little bit nicer. Now, I should mention that this was assembled by Delta Team Tactical, and I haven't really touched it, which is a good thing. We'll get into that in just a minute. I have had issues with their assembly in the past, with different things going wrong on it. However, on this build, which is albeit a little bit simpler, it's 9mm blowback, no gas block, no gas tube, nothing like that. It was actually assembled properly. The handguard screws, the barrel nut, all of that was torqued appropriately from the factory. Everything else came perfectly fine, no issues with the lower parts kit or anything that they shipped with it. And on top of that, a nice touch in the bag is they did give about 30 cases of spent 9mm, which I can only assume was test fired through this upper receiver. Keep in mind that they were sending me this upper receiver for review, so again, I'm not sure if that's something that they'll do for everybody, but mine had about 30 spent shell casings in the bag with it. Now, getting into reliability through about 400 rounds of mixed 9mm ammunition. Blowback 9mm is incredibly simple in terms of an operating system, and fortunately, usually is fairly reliable. This one here was 100% reliable with good magazines. I did have one issue on the very last round that I was supposed to fire with a UTG polymer mag. It didn't feed the very last round, so I'm not really going to hold it against the upper receiver since the polymer mags don't always feed very well. Let's say I've had issues with the mag pull and the UTG polymer mags, so not really going to hold that against the system. And again, through the rest of it, it was flawless. Now, accuracy, keep in mind that when I say mixed 9mm ammunition, I mean mixed into one tub. And so I had 4 rounds in the same hole at about 25 yards and 1 round about a ½ inch to 1 inch away. Now, that very well could have been a instance where I had 415 grain from one brand, and then I get a different brand 124 grain mixed in there, because again, it was all mixed together in my 9mm tub. Now, going forward on this build, there are a few things that I'd like to change. Number one, of course, I'd really like to run this suppressed with a 9mm suppressor, which means that I need to go about the year-long process of getting another one. And I would also like to try out some different buffer systems. I know recently they've come out, or a couple different manufacturers have come out with some quote-unquote delay systems for blowback 9mm that are supposed to make them a little bit more pleasant. While 9mm do not have a ton of recoil, they tend to have their recoil over a very, very short period of time, making them feel very snappy. So I think I would like to try out some different recoil mitigation systems. So go ahead and comment in the comments down below what you would like to see me try out on this upper. But that's about all that I got for you on the Delta Team Tactical Warship set, and of course the Aero Precision EPC-9 upper receiver. It's definitely high value, it's definitely high fun, and it's definitely not very useful when it comes to actual like practical applications. However, if you're looking for a fairly high value 9mm PCC based on the AR platform, the Aero EPC-9 is a good way to go. Takes Glock mags, does all the things, fairly reliable, and of course fairly cheap to shoot and actually use. But with all that out of the way, guys, let me know what you guys think of the kit in the comments down below. And with all that out of the way, guys, I do want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.